Okay, we'll start with announcements, and I'll start to my right. Ms. Howard, any announcements? None.
No,
Mr.
no,
Lieberman? Mr. Miller? No. Ms. Carmiller? Ms. Butler?
I don't have an announcement. I do have a report on rec, but I can wait. I don't have my glasses on.
Okay. Mr. Quinn, any announcements?
Nothing this week, Mayor.
Okay. And I don't have any announcements either. Are there any staff announcements? Mr. Shield? No, no announcements. Guess it's summertime in Princeton. Okay. Next we'll move on then to approval of the minutes, starting with the minutes for March 27th, 2017. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move them.
Moved by Ms. Krummeller. Is there a
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes.
I was absent.
It's 5 in favor and then 1 abstention because Ms. Butler was absent. And next we'll go to April 3rd, 2017. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Ms. Krummeller and seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any corrections to these minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes passed unanimously. And next, we come to comments from the public for items that are not already on the agenda, and we'll start with Henry Singer.
Good evening, and as Madam Mayor said, my name is Henry Singer. I live in Laurel Circle in Princeton, New Jersey, and I'm pleased to be back this evening. I'm here to share a concern that I have with you, sorry. Back earlier this year, the council issued a resolution against the expansion of the Princeton Charter School. And you may or may not know, but I'm in favor of the charter school. I have many friends that aren't, and I respect their opinion, and I'm not here to reopen that discussion. At the time, I felt it was a mistake to break precedent and for the town to involve itself in an issue that there's another public entity that's responsible for. But I wasn't moved enough to come to you, so I just sort of let things lie and watched the things that went on. More recently, something has happened that is a bit more troubling for me, and that's the arrival of these blue placards around town. Blue placards. They're signs that say, "We love Princeton Public Schools." It lists the schools, and it says inclusive, diverse, and excellence, which at the surface of it sounds all like motherhood and apple pie. It's great. Yes, I love the public schools. My kids went to the public schools. But when you read a little closer into it, there's another message there. For example, the charter school is in fact a public school, but it's deliberately omitted. So you say, well, what's really going on? Some of the language is reminiscent of the language in the argument. Inclusive. Princeton Charter School is not inclusive in some people's minds. Princeton Charter School is not diverse in some people's minds. So I think that there's another message here that amounts, in my opinion, to bullying. If I'm a student who attends a charter school, as I walk by on my street and I see that sign, I note the fact that my school's not there, even though I attend a public school. And even as a parent, I find it offensive. So why am I here? Unfortunately, I feel that since you have broached the issue, as you did issuing the resolution earlier this year, I'm going to come here and share with you my concern and ask you to take action. I'm not saying I'm against freedom of opinion, that people can express their opinion. But in this community, I think we should hold ourselves to a higher standard, that we shouldn't be bullying our neighbors. And at least in my opinion, it is bullying, and I wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that the lawn signs that you're referring to are signs that people are putting on their private property. And so it's just like a campaign sign or anything else that, you know, we have to follow the First Amendment, and I don't think that anybody probably wants us policing what people can speak, and that's considered, the lawn signs are considered speech. In terms of the charter school resolution, I just wanted to clarify that when we passed the resolution, the the public entity making that decision was a state agency, and this body does routinely, almost at every meeting, pass resolutions that we're sending to our state legislators or other people in Trenton. So I think we do feel that as a board, it's important that we represent the community for decisions being made in Trenton. And I think most of us saw that resolution as in line with other resolutions that we've passed to that effect. But I appreciate your sentiment, and I think I understand what you were trying to get across, and I hope you understand, like, we can't take action against the individual lawn signs.
Mayor,
Yep.
could I
Ms.
follow
Beller?
up? I think you're right if it's on private property, but I'm unfamiliar with the signs to which he's referring, but if they are in the public right-of-way, that is entirely a different matter. And I just want to say that I didn't agree that we should take it up, and there's been a little bit of a take up that issue, because I did think it was a breach, even though it's a state agency making the decision. It was a breach with our past position vis-a-vis the school. And now we have a situation where there's an issue related to the charter school that's going to be in front of the planning board on Thursday night. Have I got that right, Jenny? Thursday morning. And both Tim and Jenny, as our representatives on the planning board, are being asked to recuse from that discussion because of that position that we took. And I believe that you, on the advice of attorneys, are recusing. Is that correct? So in essence...
That's not correct, Joe.
You're not recusing?
I haven't received any advice from the attorney yet. So I expect that Mr. Porter will offer his advice to me tomorrow.
Oh,
and
okay.
depending on the nature of that advice, I'll make a decision at that time whether I'll recuse.
Did he offer to you separately?
I think Jenny's on the record as saying that she was going to recuse regardless.
Right. Okay, so we're waiting for the attorney's opinion, but it could be that because of that discussion, we have lost our representation from council onto that planning board. We'll see.
I also want to add something. I might be naive, but when I think I have seen those signs, and I thought the charter school was included. I mean, I don't know who made the signs, and are you sure that they don't include the charter school? Because it is my understanding that the charter school is a public school.
So there, it says on the bottom. Yeah, sure. It says on the bottom, it's from essentially the teachers union, whatever the name of the education association. And I mean, I have a picture if you'd like to see it, but most definitely the charter school's not on there. It lists them, yeah.
It lists all the schools.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Thank you. I'm
In a
glad
nice
to know
big
that.
heart.
Okay.
Yeah. And Madam Mayor, can I make one more comment? I appreciate that your responsibility, and I understand the decision was at the state level. I followed the issue. But I do think that there is a separation of responsibility by domain, and the schools are not in your domain. That's why the budget is separate. And so while I appreciate what you're saying about it's something of concern for the state, I think, although I didn't anticipate with what Ms. Butler said, I think that's one reason why typically the council doesn't talk about things in the school, because I go to the school board if I have a concern about that. I don't typically have to come here because it's their domain, not yours, typically. But I appreciate your point about it being a state concern.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else on this? Okay. Is there anybody else who has any comments for any items that are not already on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on from public comment to reports. And we'll start with the May police report, and I'd like to invite up Chief Sutter.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to the report, I had two items that I wanted to go over. The first one, they're kind of things that stood out to me. The first one is page 29 of the report. It's the use of force report. It's 29 of the actual police report. I don't have the page in the agenda. I just wanted to walk through this for Mayor and Council and for the public. We've done this before, but I think it warrants revisiting, so there's full understanding of what this report is and why we have it. So in May, we reported 6 total use of force incidents, which when you look previously, it looks like it's substantially up, and it would raise a question. And then there were 6 individuals who force was used against, and there were 11 total officers involved. So what I want to do is just kind of walk you through that and explain what the force was, what does this mean? So by law, we're required to report to the state, to the prosecutor's office in the state, every time a use of force is used by an officer, in addition to our internal reporting. A use of force is defined at the extreme level, deadly force, and at the very minor level as something beyond routine contact. So something like handcuffing isn't a use of force, but maybe somebody began to flail and resisted handcuffing and an officer had to grab a wrist. That would actually be use of force. So it's anything that goes beyond routine contact. So obviously, and I want to go through our process. I want to get into these specific incidents, just tell you how our process works. So I researched these specific incidents, and there were 6 incidents where we had to use force. Each incident was the most minor use of force, the one that I just described, where there was a person that resisted being taken into custody to an extent where an officer had to put a more than handcuffing or more than general guidance. And 4 of those 6 incidents were actually mental health and or intoxicated crisis, where we were accompanied by mental health workers that either committed or deemed somebody to be a danger to himself or others. So it's just important to note that in those instances, the person's actually being taken into custody for his or her own well-being. But when we have to use force to do that, we still have to report it. And in the other 2 incidents, it was a arrest where the subject physically resisted and the officers had to use more than just routine. So the answer here is, or the picture here is that it was all very minor, but we still take it extremely seriously. We report every incident. And internally, so really by law, all we have to do is complete this report. There's a state report that we fill out, and we send that to the Attorney General and to the prosecutor, and that's really where it ends. What we do is we have internal layers. So each one of these incidents, each officer's actions, so there was 11 officers actually involved, each one of them completes a report. That report is reviewed by a supervisor, the immediate supervisor. It's documented. The supervisor renders an opinion on several things. Was it justified? Was it legal? Was it excessive? Or how could it have been handled better, if at all? That gets documented, gets forwarded to a lieutenant. Lieutenant conducts a review. These reviews also include any mobile vision, video from the cars, any type of recordings, any evidence that's associated with the case. Lieutenant renders an opinion. That then goes to Internal Affairs. Internal Affairs reviews it. That person renders an opinion. It then comes to me. I review it. And then finally, a thing that we added that I thought I'm really happy with is we have a peer-based risk assessment committee. So after all the supervisors review it, quarterly, these reports go to a peer-based committee that's comprised of all different ranks within the department, and it comes from the officer's perspective. So a patrol officer looking at a patrol officer saying, well, how would I have handled this? Is there something we could have done better? You know, it's more constructive at that point after it gets to the supervisory process. And, you know, it's from the most minor incident. So I just wanted to really reiterate that we take these things, as minor as they may be, very seriously. They're thoroughly reviewed. And, you know, we look at things like training. Can we train better? We also have, I should mention, an early intervention system. So when each one of these gets entered, if there's 2 or more use of force incidents by any officer within a 6-month period, it sends a flag. And that requires an automatic review, saying that, okay, let's look for a pattern. Or is it just that there's, you know, it just happened to be what the call necessitated. So we're constantly reviewing these things individually and on the aggregate. And, you know, I just know when you look at a report, it goes from 0 to 6. It's like, wait, what happened here? They do fluctuate, and the good news is that they were relatively minor in nature. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through that and explain to you what those numbers mean. And then the second thing I wanted to bring your attention to is after that report, there's an internal affairs report that we include quarterly. So this internal affairs report, I think back in earlier this year, maybe the end of last year, the Attorney General, we've been completing this report for years. The Attorney General revised the guideline that to state basically that we had to make the report available to the public. It used to just go to the county and the state. And making it available means it's just basically a public record. So we've taken it a step further and said, well, let's really make it available and publish it so people can see it. And maybe I can put, you know, a story and explain what it means, and there's more transparency and understanding. So I think this is probably the third or fourth time I've included it quarterly in the report. And do you know where I'm at here on page 30? It's the next page. Okay. Basically, the report tells you how the complaint came in. Was it an anonymous complaint? Did a citizen make a complaint? Did it come internally from us, so a supervisor or another officer deemed an action to be inappropriate and reported it? And then it lists the total reports. And then on the left side, you'll see the Attorney General dictates categories, if you will, of what the complaint is. Improper arrest, improper entry, improper search, other criminal violations, that would be any other crime that's not enumerated. And then it goes down the list, and then you see it goes to demeanor. So the good news is that all these complaints from this quarter were demeanor complaints. And that could range from somebody that got a ticket that was unhappy, to maybe they didn't like the service they received. Even when it's more about a violation, we still take the complaint. We always take it's a complaint, and we investigate it. So sometimes it's really not necessarily about the officer, but it's about the situation. But we take it, we investigate it, we see how we can do better. So if you flip to the next page, it then tells you what were the outcomes of these complaints. So minor complaints that don't arise to an injury, an excessive force, or a crime are adjudicated internally but reported. So our internal affairs investigates, and the Attorney General enumerates whether they're sustained, exonerated, not sustained. Not sustained is there's not enough evidence to prove one way or the other. There's either no video or the statements are contradictory, and we have no evidence that can basically go over the threshold of evidence. Unfounded would be that we discovered that the incident didn't occur. Administratively closed would be the person comes in and won't cooperate and says, I'm not giving, I don't want to report it, I'm not going to give you a statement, and we can't prove it one way or the other, and we have to close it administratively. So out of these 5 demeanor complaints, 2 of them were exonerated, which meant that the officer acted appropriately, professionally, didn't violate any rules, and was courteous, that there was something else that, in our opinion, in the investigator's opinion, led to the demeanor complaint. One of them was not sustained. That meant that the complainant had a side, the officer's side may not have lined up, and there was no evidence one way or the other, so we can't come to a definitive conclusion. We have to say there's 2 sides of the story. There's no evidence that can show it one way or the other, so we document both sides, and it becomes a not sustained entry in the officer's file. One incident was unfounded, and that means that the allegation, we had to prove that the allegation was false, didn't occur. And then one was administratively closed, and in this particular case, it was the person that made a complaint. It ended up getting resolved, and they came to an understanding that it wasn't really the police officer's issue, it was more of the circumstances. So that gets entered. All of these go to the state, the Attorney General, and each gets entered into the officer's personnel file. That's what this report is. I think it's great that it's available. The one thing I always worry about is that you put this up and people don't understand kind of what it means. It's lingo. So I just thought I would kind of give some background on it. Maybe each quarter as it comes up, I'll just refresh, I'll go over it and explain it as well.
Great, thank you. Ms. Howard?
Thanks. I mean, this is great. It really is. It's great to have this level of transparency, and we're continually reminded of the tricky problem of small numbers, right? In statistical analysis. So I'm going to, of course, now ask you about something that harassment went up by a lot, but it's also a question of like went from 1 to 9, but maybe there was one incident that happened. But I think it is an important reminder, and I think probably what we ought to do is every time you go through this is walk through them like that, because that's the healthiest thing for us is to understand, especially given that we can't open the newspaper any day without seeing new things nationally happening about, especially on use of force. But my first question was, on use of force, is there just no way in the categorization to delineate between the minor and major use of force? Or, I mean, if there were use of force with a weapon, would that show up differently, or?
So the processes are different. So that's the very sterile reporting. There's a form that we are required to fill out. That's very specific in what was used, how was it used, what was the injury, what were the circumstances, and then, of course, the officer has an investigation report. But whenever there's serious bodily injury or death or the use of deadly force was employed, we don't investigate. By mandate, we call the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutor's office and the attorney general investigate those incidents, and there's a new walling off type of procedure that will wall off the Internal Affairs Bureau of the police department from the criminal investigation into the use of force. And really in Mercer County, most likely the prosecutor's office would even handle the internal part. So basically when you have these use of force incidents that become not clear, that have to be investigated, there's two paths: criminal and violation of rules and regs or excessive force that may not be criminal but may violate your rules and regulations and your policies. So right away, the department gets walled off for, it's very independent. The prosecutor and the attorney general take it over. And then at some point, they render a decision criminally, whether it be a grand jury or whatever the case may be, in deadly force or serious bodily injury. And then sometimes at some point, it'll go back to the department if it's deemed that it was proper within the law, was it proper within your policy. And it gets very murky, because when you're taking statements and things like that, it's got to be very clear as to whether they were compelled, can they be used. So this process is very clean, very transparent, very independent. And for me, in my position, I think it should be reassuring to the community that this process is in place. There's another level of transparency and investigation, that it's not us necessarily investigating our own, which I know is nationally a concern sometimes. So
absolutely, so it sounds like by definition of exclusion, these are not those kind, because these are not going. But I think that should also give us comfort, because we still want there to be scrutiny on use of force, because you want to be, from a management perspective, tracking and catching a problem early if there's a problem, and we want to make sure all of our residents are being treated appropriately. And so
absolutely,
we don't want to just say it didn't rise to the level of county engagement.
Exactly.
It means it's not a concern, right?
And I just thought too, if I could just add in this particular, I wanted to give you the background, because it goes to a different crisis that we're experiencing. I just thought it was telling that several of these incidents, the majority were intoxication and mental health issues, which goes to another whole scenario of what we're dealing with socially and as a police department as well, that we have to take on and look at from a whole different standpoint. So I just thought it was like a new picture.
Well, it's interesting, because you remember you've told us that you consider your job to be a guardian, not a warrior.
Yes.
But even that definition, it needs to be broadened probably to be
Right.
to be a caregiver, right? I mean, it's
becoming very complicated.
So you mentioned a couple meetings ago, you mentioned that you were going to be Princeton was going to be entering that new program where people with substance abuse disorder, maybe who had police involvement, you might be able to channel them into treatment. Is there any update on that? You're going to be entering that.
It's in full use. So we partnered with Recovery Advocates of America, which is a local group out of Hamilton, and basically, I've said it before. We are in a epidemic, obviously, an opioid epidemic, and it's here. We're dealing with it. I could probably tell you we're dealing with it daily in some way, shape, or form, that we are encountering that issue, whether from a law enforcement standpoint or socially, daily. And the issue becomes, especially with possession cases or petty crime like theft, you come in contact with somebody and it's a revolving door. You bring them in, they get a complaint issued to them, they have a court appearance, and they're released out the front door, and they're suffering, and there's no intervention, and you see them a week later, and hopefully it's not in a overdose situation, which unfortunately it is sometimes. So what this program does is, anybody we come in contact with, whether it be criminally or any other way, we have a number that we call it, it's a cell phone, and we are guaranteed within a half hour a response from the Recovery Advocates of America to our police station, and they guarantee that if the person wants it, they will get a bed that day in a rehab. And if for some reason they cannot, they will stay in touch with them, they will follow up with them until they are in a recovery program. And it's not a promise that anything to do with the criminal charges, but as we know, courts do recognize a person that is attempting to deal with addiction, and will recognize that. And we don't make any promises, but we tell them, it's a step in the right direction. And I guess the medicine behind it, I guess that's the right word, is that people, when they come in contact with law enforcement, are often at their point where they're most likely to accept help. It's kind of like they've hit a rock bottom, and they're most likely to accept that they've been arrested, there's been a medical call. So we've had successes in the past with getting people that have overdosed and getting them help. Nobody up to this point, and I'm going to update that 100% tomorrow, but has taken advantage right in our station. They've taken the number. We don't force it. We tried our best to get them to take advantage of it. So it's something that's very important to me and the department, and we're just seeing a lot of people don't realize it because it's still behind the veil, if you will, a little bit, but it's here, and people are suffering from it bad.
Well,
So,
I think you mentioned to me before, what was the number of naloxone
I think
overdose treatments?
this year we've had 4, and all were Narcan saves. So where the person was in cardiac arrest from overdose. And if you go around the county, I think it's like it might be 100 somewhere. But the county reports that, by the way, and I can get those numbers. The bad part is it's very repetitive. And there's bad strains out there of fentanyl and things like that are just, instantaneously deadly. So it's really scary, and, we're just hoping to have an intervention. If you save one person, it's definitely a success.
I think I'll leave it at that. I agree.
Mr. Liverman and then Ms. Carmiller.
Yeah, mine's a little easier, Chief, and it's considering the deer population. And I have seen so many deer that it has gotten kind of scary here, especially on Rosedale Road.
Mm-hmm.
I counted 8 within 5 minutes last Friday. And today on Mercer, I counted 4. And I'm seeing more and more, and I'm wondering if we're getting more complaints or if there's more accidents.
I'm going to give you that. I'm going to give you that right now. I'm looking. We actually have that. That statistic.
Because I see in the report it said 2.
Yeah, it's accidents involving deer to date have been 13.
13.
It's 13 too many, obviously. I think that's drastically down from
Before we started.
Yeah, but still probably. I echo your observations for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I have 2 subjects. Back to the use of force, I think one of the reasons it was recommended that we start this was that we talked with the ACLU, and it's the whole concern about racial profiling. And I was wondering how race comes into this. Do you consider that, and could you put that race as part of this report, or would there be a reason not to do
Yes.
that?
No, we do. We actually examine that, so we have that, and it's part of our assessment. So there's another interesting component to your point, because you're exactly on the money, and we're looking at this internally. So we look at officers' actions in terms of race across all types of situations, and we look for patterns. So, it could be use of force with motor vehicle stops, with a summons issued, with something else, and all of a sudden, you would see a pattern. And we actually have one of our officers actually put together I guess you would call it a spreadsheet, the algorithms that are there that are actually tracking this and can pick up patterns, and that's part of the risk assessment committee. The good news is we look at it quarterly. We don't see those, but when we do, it's an automatic, investigation, if you will, that there's a pattern. So we do have it. We could easily probably add that to the report. I don't think it's a big issue, but we look at that. It's important to not just look at it in one category, but to look at patterns in all the different enforcement actions, use of force being one of them.
It just might be a good way to get out in front
Yes.
and give the council another bragging point.
We can easily do that. That's not an issue at all. Put it right at the bottom of the report.
And so my second question was about the internal affairs complaint. I think that sounds really great. But the truth is, I think I'd feel a little more confident if some of them weren't resolved, because I wouldn't expect our police force to be 100% perfect. In fact, I always think about, when I did my ride along with the police, by the end, I was like, I could imagine that I would be rude if I were a police officer. Like, I really think, and I don't expect police officers to be saints. And so my question, do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah, absolutely. And I could show you in the, they're not all, many are sustained, especially mostly with demeanor. And we have usually there was an interaction, the officer, got taken in by the circumstances and maybe said something or had a poor demeanor. And I got to tell you, the ones that we've had recently, we bring the officer in, and this is to the incident. They're not many, but there's a handful. And usually it's a motor vehicle stop, and we show them the tape, and to each one, they sit and say, ooh, probably shouldn't have said that. And they realize it when they see themselves, and it's completely constructive. It's getting caught up in the moment. Tensions run high, and we're human, and we make the mistakes, and that's where coaching comes in, mentoring comes in, training comes in, but we are human, and it's certainly, absolutely, to your point, it's constructive when we do sustain them and we fix it.
That's how we feel when we watch our council meetings. Oops, I probably should have said that. I have a couple of questions. One is, last week or at our last meeting, we recognized the good work of Arm in Arm, and I don't, do you interface with them at all? Because one of the things that I know that they do is help provide some relief for the Ferguson effect, where, low-income people get kind of caught up in the court system.
Yeah. No, but that's interesting.
Can you make that connection, Heather?
Arm in Arm?
Yes, so that is...
It's the old crisis ministry, they changed their name.
Yeah, it's the old, yes, thanks, maybe that's... But,
to your point then, yes.
When you're talking about...
Yes.
And also back to Jenny's point about the internal investigation, as you pass that along, is it kind of like the court system where the next person can overrule the previous one, or do they look at it independently and make their judgment? That's
a great question. It's independent, so ultimately... At the end of that, so if something drastic is wrong right off the beginning, it'd come right to me. The first supervisor would say, oh, there was a massive breach of policy here, and it would get reported to me immediately. And then it would go either to the prosecutor to IA, or both. But we complete these forms that are called meaningful reviews, and they're done independently. And then I get, at the end, all of them. Okay. And compare notes, and usually there's constructive things. Maybe it's something as simple as, like you were just saying, Jenny, that the officer got caught up in the circumstances and may need some, we call it verbal judo, some techniques on how to de-escalate verbal situations, and we send them to a training class. But that would usually come at the end from me or internal affairs. But it's completely independent as it goes up the chain, so that we get everybody's individual opinion.
Okay. And I just want to echo Heather's thanks on this explanation for the use of force, because it happens so infrequently that when it does happen, you sort of have to walk through to try and remember. You put in a lot of baby seats, switching to a happier topic, and I always think it's worth reminding
Yes.
people that we do have that service and that the police will help you install baby seats, and that's car seats, whatever people are calling them these days, but it's so important, and getting it right is critical, so.
They have specialized training. I think we have 5 officers now, so we can get you an appointment just about any day. We'll come in day or night. We have people on midnights even. If you work days, you want to do it, we'll be there. It's super, super important that, believe me, that's nowhere where you want to take a chance.
And you're also still, people can still notify you when they're going on vacation?
We actually streamline that process through seamless docs. So now it comes into us. We're getting more of them actually now. They're coming in electronically from our website, and they go right to our Safe Neighborhoods unit, who enters them into our system, and they're routinely checked.
So people who are listening at home, they would go to
The
go to
website,
our website,
and there's
go
a
to the
form.
police department.
And there's a form right on there
And
that
they
they can
can
fill
fill
out
out
and send
online.
right. It comes to me and to our Safe Neighborhoods unit, who enters it in our system.
And one final thing, it's August 1st for all intents and purposes, and we had on our list of priorities to talk about body cameras at some point. And I think we maybe have a different view of how that ought to transpire, but I was sort of thinking that we might have an informational report from the police just about things we ought to be educating
Sure.
ourselves about all the time, as even if we don't move to that
Sure.
anytime in the near future, because it is a big expense, it's a big consideration, but it's in the news all the time, and I don't even know how to read the articles critically.
It is. I totally agree with you. You know, and that's no problem. The one thing that I had envisioned, I had a lot of thoughts on it, but one thing that I thought was important, the informational thing is great. I also thought when we did our strategic plan, we did a series of focus groups. I thought it would be helpful at some point that we organize kind of the same process with body cameras. I know other departments have done it. I think NYPD did it. NYPD completed it very successfully, I believe. They did a series of focus groups with, whether it be governing body, public officials, schools, all the different stakeholders, just, you know, citizens, to kind of get concerns, feelings that would, so it's just not coming from, I always get very, I don't want to dictate, you know, we should have body cameras and this is the way it has to be, and because I say it, or the police department, so we have an opinion on it. But I think it might be helpful to hear from, we could certainly put together an informational packet from our perspective, and then maybe as we proceed deliberately, we come up with a process that,
Well, I think council's going to have different, I think that's a great idea, the focus groups are fabulous, but we're also going to have considerations about storage
Money,
and
yeah.
Well, the
cost.
money is what we'll be
And-
concerned about, right?
Right, how
it's
we're,
huge.
maybe the public isn't going to care about the storage
Yes.
and how that information can be called up, but I think it's something that the governing body needs to be educated and be starting to think about,
Totally.
because different people are getting into that market, which is a good thing.
Totally agree, and we've done the, with our IT department, we did that, we have some information put together that we can provide that shows, and policies and things like that, that model policies that we can show you and kind of get an idea of what the monetary cost would be as well.
And even if we can't fit it on an agenda, you
Sure.
know, I'd love to see the material independently.
We'll put it together.
Chief, I just wanted to congratulate you on anticipating the new guy questions this month. So all my questions have been answered. I did want to give a shout out to the department for participating in an event. I was at an open house for the Civil Rights Commission yesterday, and the event that the department partnered with Human Services, the library, SHUP, Senior Resource Center, and Committed and Faithful on a neighborhood party at Reading Circle, which was a huge success that exceeded everyone's expectations, and the department played a key role in providing food, which ran out. It was such a great success. So thank you for that. I know that everyone was very pleased. And I'll have more questions for you at your next report.
Oh, I have one last really quick question. On the Safe Neighborhoods unit list, it says attended the marijuana committee meeting. And I was wondering, oh, was there a committee? I want to be
That
on
was,
it.
yes, that was the committee. Yeah, no, that was a very good meeting. We had the munchies after, but no. Honestly. That was the forum that we put together for the John Lewis Forum.
Is it an ongoing committee or just
No.
okay, that's what I was wondering.
No, what it is it's a committee that we pick up various items or subjects that the community may be interested in. So, last year we dealt with the
Underage alcohol.
Underage alcohol. So this year we dealt with the marijuana, and next year it'll be another issue. So they'll come to.
So it's basically from Corner House.
Yes. Your Corner House, Prince Alcohol Drug Alliance, the police, the Board of Education. We have counselors there, and so forth.
Chief, I had one question for you, actually, on the statistics for the foot patrol.
Mm-hmm.
Those look like it was way down this year versus last year. Is that weather related or staffing related?
I guess a little bit of both. I don't want to say there's a specific issue for. We mandate that when we're at a certain level, there's a foot patrol out. It also could be a recording data issue where it's not always the officers are out on foot and it's not always getting entered. And I kind of think sometimes that's more what it is. But it's also when we're at a certain level of officers on the street, that's the first thing and that goes shift to shift. That's the first thing that goes because we have to have people available to respond. They still actually, you'll find that even when we're at that minimum level, an officer will park it out and walk different areas, and it sometimes doesn't always get recorded. But you'll see these things with the summertime and all that, they should spike now. So we watch that, but thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, thank you. And then I just because this is a time of year with the tour buses.
Yes.
Have you noticed anything? I mean, my complaints to me have gone way down, so I take that as a good sign, but I don't know what you're seeing from your end.
Well, I was really patting ourselves on the back big time a couple of weeks ago, and then they just went, as I was doing, as my hand was on my shoulder, the complaints started coming in, so they did come up again a little bit within the last like 2 or 3 weeks. They seem to go up. I got more calls. But we're getting way more compliance than we got a year or two, way more compliance. So we deal with them as we get a call, and it pretty much resolves it. And I don't see them, my observations are when I'm out looking, they're not blocking traffic as much as they were like 2 years ago. It was just horrible.
And I see them on Alexander Road all the time.
Yeah,
That's what I was going to say. I do
Yeah.
see them down
Yeah.
using Alexander.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. And then just final follow-up question to the discussion about the substance abuse. Are you doing special training? I was just hearing this really terrifying story about fentanyl, and do you have the resources that the department needs in order to do any sort of special training that we need to do, given you're seeing more of this?
That's a great question. So we have the Narcan training that we get. Part of that training comes through our crisis intervention training, but there's 2 issues that are, I guess, really at the forefront. There's 2 things, actually, and it's from an officer safety issue as well. We're statewide, we are having officers that were contaminated with fentanyl by touching it, and we get those alerts. So when we get the intelligence of what the brand is, and that all goes out, our officers are reminded through squad briefings about protecting themselves, what to look for. And as from the medical standpoint, I think when it happens, they are there, and our first aid squad and our police department are unfortunately becoming, very good at that response and recognizing it and getting the Narcan, in multiple doses at times to save somebody's life. So to answer your question, yes, we're on it.
Right, thank you. Anything else for the chief? Okay, thank you. Yes. All right, and then we come to our next report, which is on the Mary Maas Playground renovation project schedule update. Ms. Stockton.
Good evening, thank you. I'm representing both engineering and recreation department tonight in giving this report. we've been meeting with Mark DeShield, the administrator, to review the schedule for Mary Maas Park. And where we're at currently is that we are looking to put the project out to bid later this fall in October. We only received final plans, actually final being about 90 to 95% plans from the consultant at the end of May. And so we are looking to put the project out to bid in October for a number of reasons. One of the reasons being availability of contractors to put together a responsive bid for the project. We were concerned in putting out a bid in the middle of summer when contractors are very busy that they would not sharpen their pencils and give us their best price for the project. So we, working with Mark, looked at the pros and cons and decided that it would be better suited to hold the project until the fall, putting it out to bid so that we would be in a position to award a contract in about November. And then we would set the contract up so depending on the winter weather, the contractor could feasibly start work after the first of the year. Not everything he has to do, or not all of the work is restricted by weather conditions, and so depending on what the conditions are, if the ground is not frozen, the contractor could get in and do some work before the springtime. So we're setting up the contract to follow that path, and we would be looking at completion no later than the beginning of June, so we could have the ribbon cutting just about the same time that the former wading pool used to open in the past. So that's the schedule we're on. Like I said, we have the 95% plans from the consultant. We've been working on writing all of the specifications, and we're moving towards that goal of going out to bid in October.
Okay, great. Ms. Krummeller?
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what caused the delay? I mean, part of it was, it's my understanding that part of it was that we had a lengthy process, and what made it, that's what if there's no easy answer.
I don't know if it was, I think, less the public process and more the consultant's ability to turn around the project.
That's what I was wondering.
Well, they did say to us that they felt we weren't going to move forward, and so they sort of put it on the back burner for a while. They were getting some feedback about what was going on internally, and so they didn't address it. And when they did turn around to look at it again, when we said, no, we are moving forward, it just took a really long time.
And I just have a question about this summer and the property. Are there plans at all to open up at least part of the space there, so if it's safe for people to use it just as like a grassy area for recreation?
Recreation staff were going to look at the field conditions to make sure it was safe to remove the orange fence and look at opening it up. They do mow it and maintain it, so as long as there's no tripping hazards, they would look to open it up. And I know there was a suggestion about putting signage out at the park about Mary Maas Playground coming soon. And so I think they are also working on putting that together.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions from Ms. Stockton? Nope. Okay. So we'll continue with reports. I'll turn again to Ms. Howard. Any reports tonight?
Yes, just want to remind folks, and I'm looking at the deadline, about the backpack drive that the Department of Human Services is having, and I think it's due, Jeff, do you know? I think they're due August 5th, next Friday. And we're really looking for donations of new school equipment, including backpacks and actual equipment like notebooks and pens and pencils. But if you don't have time to go shopping, actually just gift cards or financial contributions would work too. The staff is going to be going, we'll go shopping and we'll fill that out. So the main thing is that just the need is there, and although it feels like we're at the height of the summer and we shouldn't be thinking about school, now's the time. Thanks.
Heather, who would the people write the check out to if they wanted to donate? Do you know?
Assume the Department of Human Services. I'm looking and seeing. If you have any questions, you can call the Department of Human Services. That's probably the best thing to tell people. Thank you.
Yes, I want to mention that we had one Blue Curtain concert on 7/15 that was hugely successful, but unfortunately our concert on
It sounded
Saturday
very
night-
nice. It sounded very nice, Councilwoman.
7:15,
Yes,
yay.
I really enjoyed it. Thank
Right,
you.
yes, and I think it was well received. Unfortunately, a lot of work went into Saturday night, and then it ended up getting rained out. But I do want to thank Blue Curtain and Steve Allen. And the entire rec staff. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes in to these concerts, including, they were setting up on Saturday night in the hopes that they would be able to pull it off when the skies opened up. So Rec has hired a new program supervisor, Nicole Palucci, and she started on July 3rd. She worked for the Morris County Parks Commission and the Manalapan Recreation Department. So we're delighted to welcome her on board. She's jumped right into the deep end of the pool. We have community night out on Tuesday, August 1st from 5 to 8 at the pool. Free admission during that time period. And Vicki Caines and Nicole are supervising the event with support from the police. Thank you very much, Nick. And the swim championships were going on today and tomorrow, so anyone who's been around has probably seen a flurry of activities, and we're shuttling people from the Franklin lot, et cetera. And probably we have about 2,000 people through the pool in these 2 days. So it's a lot of work and a lot of activity. And I think that's it. Do we want to, Bernie, talk about the Economic Development Committee? Well, geez, I thought you'd do this for me, Bernie. So the Economic Development Committee has met on a number of occasions and been meeting with people throughout the community. I think, did we report publicly on the meeting with the folks from the university, Bernie, when they were so helpful about some of the ideas that they've seen work in other cities? I think you did report on that. But one of the things that came up at a recent, I guess, CFAC meeting and then follow up in the Economic Development Committee was the potential desire on the part of the community to see the university do more, look at developing more taxable properties on our side of the river, on our side of the lake. So we heard during the campus plan, when they had that public meeting about all the development, the bridge across the lake, and the development on the other side of the lake that intends to take place, and how they would infill on the campus. But as we looked at this, we see a need in our town, I guess not just from the university, but from anyone who's interested in developing either a small hotel or a hotel and conference center. We'd sort of like to get feedback from members of council, whether that's something you'd be amenable toward working. It would probably involve a zoning change. We'd have to look at various sites around town that we might want to consider for rezoning that would encourage that kind of development. But specifically, I think we'd like to start, before the university rolls out their campus plan, to have a conversation with them about whether that's at all a possibility. Did I capture that, Bernie?
Yes, I think you did quite well.
I think it seems like a good idea. I think I've been saying this around, that, we have, I think there is a need for more hotel space in town, and it's a good rateable for us, so.
I mean, I would just add, especially since it's just been, didn't the governor just veto legislation that would allow municipalities to tax Airbnb?
Yes. But I might recommend asking the planning board to take a look at this in terms of, I mean, what I remember the Economic Development Committee suggestion initially would be maybe to create some overlay zones that would encourage hotel conference centers. And I mean, we could certainly do that with a group at council, but I do also feel like it's important for the planning board to be engaged on this. And so maybe it's the direction from council should be to ask Tim and Jenny to take this back to the planning board, maybe a master plan subcommittee or some other group on the planning board can take a look.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Okay. Great. And then, Mr. Quinn, were you done with reports?
Yeah, I don't have any reports to see.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I would just want to add to what my colleague said about economic development, that we're trying to approach this on a multiple front standpoint. And we've worked very closely with the merchants in town, trying to identify what they see as things that inhibit the development of businesses in our central business district and elsewhere in the community, and trying to find a way to reduce the barriers in any way that we can. And we've also had discussions about whether there's a possibility for developing technology enterprises in town. So it's not a single focus that we put on it. And hopefully by the end of this year, we will have arrived at a point where we can say, perhaps this is a direction we ought to be focusing on over the next few years.
Thank you. And I'll just add one more thing for the work of the Economic Development Committee. We've been working closely with staff, and one of the issues we've heard from local merchants was just the cost of doing business in terms of time. And so Mark DeShield and Jeff Grosser have been working internally to get our seamless docks up and running with a lot of departments. And when we get to staff reports, maybe Jeff or Mark can jump in and give some more details. But at our last meeting with the merchants, they're all really impressed with the progress that's been made so far. And it has a real ability to be able to get the permits online, to take a process that normally takes months and months of going back and forth, and to make that much more efficient. And it's certainly something where we want to be able to help new companies that want to come into town, or existing companies that just need to make a change for some reason, to get in and out of our offices quickly. And then I had a couple more reports. The governor just signed a piece of legislation that by 2030, New Jersey is supposed to reduce its food waste by 50%. So this is an exciting new piece of legislation that will hopefully help to energize the composting effort statewide. Princeton's been a leader on that, but we've had essentially a pilot program for many years now, and we've been struggling with trying to find a viable local place to take the waste to have it processed. So hopefully this new legislation will help jumpstart that part of the economy. And then I also wanted to make an announcement about tax bills this year. They're going out, maybe Mark can give the details on this, but they're going out this week. And I do want to thank CFAC, Citizens Finance Advisory Committee, for putting together their annual newsletter. It's a huge benefit to us here on council, the time that goes into explaining the tax bill and putting together something that breaks it down, that we can send out to residents so people understand what they're being charged for. And with that, turn it over. Mr. DeShield, do you have any reports?
First, I wanted to report to council, as you know, in 2015, council authorized the donation of a property at 31 Lytle Street to Habitat for Humanities for the construction of affordable housing units. They've been working to see if they could design the units on that property. They have finally prepared some preliminary plans to put 2 units on the property. As we indicated, it will be at the total cost of Habitat for Humanity. We'll just need to donate the land. So they will be presenting that to us shortly, the final plans. They will then need to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, also Historic Preservation for approvals. So we're very happy to see that project moving along now. Just to also mention, as the mayor talked about, we have been working with our departments in Seamless Knox. Actually, the chief mentioned some areas where he is using it, really to streamline all of our processes in terms of permitting. We have fire, police, health department, all moving in that direction, really trying to get streamline all of our processes, and we're diligently moving that forward. And we should, in the next couple of months, see a number of offices putting together their processes online. So we hope to improve that process. And do you have something while I look something up? Okay, good.
Earlier, you were speaking about permits, and we continue to speak about permits, so I thought I'd give you an update on zoning and engineering permits for the first half of the year. Through the beginning of July, zoning permits were up 20% compared to last year. The engineering permits were up 42%. And the breakdown for those were, for new homes, the permits are up 21%. For demolitions, we're down 17%. And pools, amazingly, were up 200% for the first half of this year compared to last year. So that, yes.
Is that a case of small numbers creating a huge percent, or?
It is. With pools, last year we had 3 pools in the first half. This year it's 9 pools. So it is small numbers. Zoning permits, 384 last year, 462 this year for the first half. The new homes are 19 this year versus 15 last year. So they're relatively small numbers.
Question, Deanna, are the pools primarily associated with new homes, or are they being added to existing homes?
I think it's a little bit of both. I haven't seen every application that came through this year, but when I did see them, they were associated, like the new one on Cleveland included a pool, but there were others that I saw that were just a pool being added to the property.
Could
And are you, oh, go ahead, Ms. Butler.
I have another question. In the merchant meeting, you said something that, in my mind, I'd been expecting our parking study to come back in August, but you said something in the merchant meeting that made me think maybe we're not going to get the results in August. Can you give us an update on when we might expect that?
I can do that. Is there any other question on permits?
Yeah, I had one.
Okay.
I mean, having the engineering numbers go up 42% is quite a bit, and are you finding that you're strained with the your staffing and getting able to, meet the deadlines for responding, or how is that impacting the department?
It is. Jack West is our land use engineer, and he is definitely busy between him and Don Mayer Brown covering all of the applications that have come in. And so, two, we're looking to streamline our process to make sure that we're only asking for the information that we truly critically need versus what we would like to see on applications. I think more than anything, we're seeing the impact on inspections during construction rather than the reviews prior to giving out the permits. That has been a discussion point in the past about with development looking at possibly bringing in an inspector that can then be paid for through inspection fees. So that may be a future request out of the engineering department. But on to if there's no other question on that, I'll speak to the parking study. We are looking to bring back draft recommendations from the parking consultant in September. As we all know, the summer is very quiet in Princeton, and so what we're looking at doing is bringing anything back of substance that we would like to have a public meeting on in September. But they are working diligently on it. We're putting together information for them about square footage of usages in the downtown area so that they can use that as a basis point to make comparisons and look at changes in our like retail, restaurant, business makeup, and look at the off-street parking requirements associated with that.
Mayor, Mr. DeShiel, on Saturday they had a Witherspoon-Jackson meeting, and one of the questions were concerning the Lytle Street development, Habitat for Humanity, and I think one of the issues, the Lytle Street. So I think one of the issues that had come up was if it was going to be a two family, I guess, dwelling, or two separate families could purchase the dwellings. Some members were concerned about parking, I think. And the other issue was, will there be a plan where it will just be one home, or would it be just the two-family style for that location? I think that they weren't sure.
I'm going to try, if I can understand. One, in terms of the parking, they will only be able to actually develop one space on the property because of the length of the property. One of the things that I am suggesting to council is that we do look at finding some alternatives at municipal lots for the other individuals in the property. And the way the design of the property is, I hope I'm answering your question, the first unit will be facing the street. The unit then behind that will be facing towards in the opposite direction, so you would have to walk around. So when you come down the street, you would just see as if it was a one-family house, but the other family would be behind it, and there would be a walkway to get to the other property.
If I remember, one of the issues was that if it's only developed as one property, it's not affordable by any stretch, so it has to be two units in order to make the numbers work.
Thank you.
And were there any other staff reports?
Oh, I just wanted to, council has on its resolutions, the resolution is to extend the grace period to August 21st for the taxes. The tax bills will actually go out, we're hoping by this Wednesday.
Okay, any other reports? Okay, great. We'll move on then to the work session for this evening, and that's going to be on the freebie schedule and route changes. And Ms. Krummeler, did you want to introduce this work session?
Sure. I'd like to introduce Faye Ryder. She's the chair of the Public Transit Advisory Committee, and she's going to report on the recommendations by the committee to reduce commuter service and increase neighborhood service, and you'll see she'll explain everything. But the committee decided to leave the decision really up to I don't know if they decided, it probably is our decision, ultimately. So it is a policy decision that we're making to change the service. But I think it's a good change. And we got some emails that people thought we were curtailing the service, and we're really trying to optimize it, as you'll see. So the committee was not unanimous in the recommendation. So I think there are one or two people who weren't completely on board with it. So that's another reason why we wanted to make sure that the council had some time to discuss it. So are you?
Yes, thank you. Let's see if I can click on duplicate. As long as I could just get the slide up there.
Okay, I followed your instructions, John.
Oh,
To the left.
Windows P?
Yeah, and then we hit duplicate.
It was on before.
look for from current slide. So slideshow. Here, let's try this. Wait,
We practiced like 5 times.
I know.
I swear.
This is always the hardest part.
No, it's on table. Say table 2? I'm trying to see it. Table 1, 2. I'm sorry. Is it 2 or 1? It's 1. It's on table 1.
While we're waiting, is there a motion to,
Oh, there it
there
goes.
he goes, magic.
Okay. We're in business. Can you hear me? Okay, so you can see up on the screen our current schedule for the neighborhood bus schedule. We currently have 2 schedules, the neighborhood bus schedule and the commuter schedule. Let's see. This is the commuter schedule, which runs in the early morning, and it runs to the Dinky. It actually follows a different route. So it starts very early in the morning. It stops after the early morning commute, and then it picks up again to take commuters home from the Dinky. So the next chart shows the performance of the neighborhood and the commuter. And you could see that the neighborhood service has consistently increased in ridership for the past 4 years. And the commuter service has actually gone down in ridership. And for those of you who were on council 2 years ago, you may recall we came before you to discuss whether or not we wanted to continue the commuter service, because ridership was also not doing very well, and you voted to continue the service. So now that's one of the reasons why we're back here trying to evaluate what to do, because the ridership has continually gone down. We have had increasing demand for additional neighborhood service, especially for those people who would like to attend functions in the evening, because currently the neighborhood service ends at about 3:30. So the next slide, you can see the annual number of daily passengers carried per trip. And you can see we have many more passengers on the neighborhood run than we do on the commuter.
You know, and if I could interject, in case people watching can't see the numbers, that the numbers are extremely low. When it says there's an average of 1, that means that they're often 0, because sometimes there are 2. So, it's 1, 2, and the biggest number is an average of 3.5. So there are no trips with more than 4.
So the goals for the freebie bus service are twofold. The neighborhood service is to increase service levels to meet capacity and to provide additional opportunities such as access to jobs, medical services programs, and the commuter service is to consolidate existing service around popular times to improve efficiencies. That was our goal. So what we've done as proposed enhancements is we've added earlier times for arrival at the various stops, Princeton Senior Resource Center, the library, etc., and earlier service stops for the various housing communities we stop at. Earlier trips in the morning will meet the needs of other commuters, people who commute later in the morning, people who may want to arrive to jobs, for instance, at 9 o'clock, who either live in Princeton or commute from contiguous areas. Currently, as it stands, neither service provides that. So it would actually, hopefully, increase ridership from commuters. They would just ride at a different time. It would also provide later service. Currently, the daytime freebie service ends at about 3:30, and with our proposed plan of merging the two services, it would go till about 7:30 or 8 at night. We've also added a mid-morning ride to the Dinky station for those people who are interested in using the Dinky that are not in the category of traditional early morning commuter. As many of you know, people commute at different times to work, and there are other reasons for people to get to the Dinky service. They may want to go to New York for the day, or for people who work remotely, they may want to go to attend meetings. So the proposed reductions and the impact are that we would eliminate unproductive trips while maintaining the most utilized trips, have longer travel times for passengers traveling to and from Princeton Shopping Center in the PM when the bus follows the neighborhood route, and reduce unproductive trips. It also may increase the number of passengers carried on remaining trips. And we would have more service provided on the neighborhood route where demand has been greater. In conclusion, earlier and later service on the neighborhood route will enhance capacity issues on freebie service. It would also eliminate confusion. There's a lot of confusion in the community about the two different types of services. We're proposing one service where we're merging the two routes. It'll also provide increased access for people to commute to employers, people who work in Princeton, in various restaurants and local businesses. The extended hours will increase opportunities for people to attend programs and services at the library, at the Princeton Senior Resource Center, and reduce the number of vehicles on the street because ideally more people would be taking public transportation. It also has the potential to address some of the parking issues in Princeton because more people would be taking public transportation. It would eliminate unproductive trips. As Jenny just mentioned, there are trips with as little as 1 or 0 riders, and it redistributes resources to increase productivity. This is cost neutral, so through this new schedule, we would be actually having more service for the same cost. So I thought you might want to see our proposed schedule, and this is a work in progress.
I'm going to make it
Scroll down.
the view
Yeah.
full screen, just for the people. Well, then control, yeah, there.
There we go. Is that better? So at the top, you can see travel to downtown and Elm Court, which is the last stop. And then the second chart shows travel to the Princeton Shopping Center. The yellow sections are when there's no service.
No service to the Dinky.
Right. So we welcome questions.
I just wanted to also add that the schedule was done by the, we contract out with Greater Mercer Traffic Transportation Management Association, Joan Rec and Cheryl Castronakis.
Castronakis.
Anyway, they were doing this. They were figuring out the schedule and really were helping us figure out what to do. Neither of them are here, but just wanted you to know that we had some professionals looking at this.
Great. Well, I want to thank the committee and Ms. Kremiller for doing, looking at the data, collecting it, and doing an analysis and trying to figure out how to better deliver service. I assume this is the same, essentially the cost will be a wash from what we're
Yes.
spending now on it, right? Are there any questions?
No, I just want to say, I think that this is beautiful. I know Jenny mentioned earlier, there were some members that didn't agree, and I didn't know what they didn't agree to. It seemed like this is utilizing the service in a better way for everyone, really.
Great.
No, there's some people who wanted to speak too, but are there any questions from council before we open it up? If there's anybody else with comments? No?
Yeah, you pointed out the reduction in use of the freebie to get to the Dinky by commuters. Do we have any appreciation as to why? First of all, why the ridership is not greater in use of the freebie to get to the Dinky, and why it dropped from its high point?
Well, I know that Joan from GMT, whatever that acronym is,
Mercer.
she just told me today that 5 of the riders that used to take the freebie are now taking the bus to New York. So I thought that was interesting, because I never take the bus because it takes so long, but they must have decided that was better.
There have been multiple reasons over the years. I mean, at one point, we thought it might be due to the fact that at Princeton Junction, they added more parking spaces, so more people were driving there. Now that's filled. Then there's all the construction down by the Dinky, so that may have impacted. Now we have problems with New Jersey Transit, so a lot of people are opting to just use the bus or stay home or take other modes of transportation. But we've never actually had the resources to, study it adequately.
Have we ever asked the question of what kind of inducement would it take to get people to use the freebie and the Dinky? For example, Many people from Princeton go into New York on Wednesdays for matinees to catch a show and stay for dinner. Have we tried to draw that segment in to using the freebie and the dinky?
Well, this should help with that because in the past, the only routes to the dinky were very early in the morning. So for people who want to go in for a matinee, that would be very early. But now there's this mid-morning route, which would make that possible, actually.
Just a question about, so first of all, I thank you for this, for the work that's been done. I think that I, like many people, are frustrated when I see the dinky riding around with no one in it. I feel that it's in...
Freebie.
The freebie, I'm sorry. Pardon me. Still, it's okay, you can correct me, I'm still concussed. So, again, it's a source of frustration, and I know that there are people who think that it hasn't been marketed well enough, and I think that there's also concern that dinky ridership is down, and so I think that a good question would be, isn't this going to further suppress ridership of the dinky? People are afraid that if dinky numbers go down to a certain point that NJ Transit's just going to pull the plug. So is there a way that we can encourage more ridership at peak in addition to the neighborhood times? And also my other question, which I forgot to ask in the beginning, was when was this data collected? Was it at a time when people might walk instead of ride because it was a nice morning, or?
The data is collected constantly, so that one of the things that the Public Transit Advisory Committee does is every month we see the data. So every single trip, every day, the data is. So I don't know how far back the average, when it says average trip, I don't know if that's, I think it's a year, but.
So it is winter.
Yeah, that was an
it's
average.
monthly.
Thank you.
And we have monthly reports. I definitely agree with what you're saying. It would be nice, in a sense, if every run can include the dinky, but that would dramatically increase the cost because then we would have to have 2 buses going at all times. But the committee is making other efforts to increase dinky ridership as well as ridership on all public transportation. We have a campaign that's going to start called Go Princeton that Greater Mercer has also been charged to help us work on. So we're hoping that that will help in this effort. You know, I do want to, and we have added the 10:30, you know, the late morning run to the dinky with the hope of attracting other kinds of riders. Yes, we are eliminating some early morning routes, but in reality, having a route that only 2 people take to the dinky isn't ultimately going to increase ridership on the dinky unless we had an all-out effort to recruit that particular kind of commuter that leaves very early in the morning. So the committee is very aware of the importance of working to increasing ridership on the dinky and our commitment to the memorandum of agreement with the university. So don't think that we don't have that in mind.
Thank you so much.
You know, another thing that I'd like to mention is that one thing that we've learned as the years of the freebie have gone by, and you can see this, is that our greatest market is the affordable housing units, and so people who don't have cars are using the freebie. And I think, I mean, most commuters, if you commute on the dinky, it's pretty expensive to get to New York. So I think most people have cars and they're just going to drive to the dinky station and park or walk, because it's also a lot of the dinky is you know, within a mile of the the station, and so people who can walk to the Dinky will walk there. So one of the reasons I like the changes of schedules, I think our focus has shifted a little bit, and I think that's a good thing too, so that the freebie now we can feel good that it's providing a service for people who need it. We were hoping, I think, when we first, when the freebie came into existence, that it would get people out of their cars and, reduce traffic. And I think it's focused a little bit. We still want to do that. That's a big hope, but it definitely is helping people get places who don't have any other options.
I actually have one follow-up question before we open it up. Can you go back to the schedule, the new proposed schedule? And I know when there's the midday Dinky run, what does that do to the commuter schedule in terms of the gap between between buses?
So there it is. You can see it. I'm not sure of your question.
So is it still going to all the regular stops when it goes to the Dinky? It's adding the stop to the Dinky, but it's
Yes.
not taking away, it's adding another 10 minutes to the route is that? Just to make sure I'm reading that correctly.
Yes,
Okay.
which is why it's tricky to do these things. But yes, no, it would still go to the other stops.
Okay. Okay.
And it would be interesting to see how that plays out, because if it doesn't take that much time, we could ultimately consider more stops at the Dinky.
Okay, I would like to open it up. If there's folks who'd like to speak to this, I'd ask everybody who wants to speak to come line up at the microphone. And
I just remember, I should have also acknowledged the members of the committee who are here. We have Dozier Hammond is here, Kristen Applegate, and Tamara Mateo. Is there anybody else from the committee here? Okay. And Ralph Widener is a emeritus committee member.
yeah, and if you can keep your remarks to 3 minutes, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kip Cherry. And is this okay, speaking from here? I'm Kip Cherry, 24 Dempsey. I've just sent around a handout for you. I think it's really good that we're having a discussion tonight about the freebie, particularly the Commuter Express freebie, which serves the Dinky. At first, I thought reducing the freebie Commuter Express would not be a bad thing, since I thought we would be throwing out the weak routes and saving the best routes with the largest riderships. But this is not really the case. Further, Princeton, as a municipality, along with Princeton University, as you have referred to, made a commitment in its memorandum of understanding to promote the Dinky. On this basis, we should be promoting the freebie with its current schedule and looking for ways to improve that schedule to meet the express commuter trains to New York City, not contemplating cutting service. In fact, I would say that very few commuters know much about the Commuter Express service to the Dinky offered by the freebie, or that previous reliability problems have been solved by the purchase of a brand new bus. Instead, we are looking at taking a big step backwards. Further, the town, with its long-term commitment to promoting mass transit to reduce congestion and emissions, in its recent pledge to support the Paris Accords, should not be stepping back from supporting the freebie express service for commuters. Rather, it should be promoting that service with fanfare. And lastly, as we arrive finally at the opening of the Lewis Center and the removal of the construction barriers, again, in accordance with the MOU, we should be programming and promoting the heck out of the freebie and the Dinky, not reducing service. I've been looking at the new draft of the schedule and comparing that to the old draft, and your handout is a shortcut to looking at that. What I want to point out is that the freebie currently begins at 5:25 a.m. The first three buses, 5:25 through 6:20, currently have thin ridership. We all agree to that. But the question is, should we cut service and then promote what's left to promote, or should we promote and educate the commuter community about the existing express service? So the plan is to cut out trips 1 and 2, which you see on your chart. Cut number 4, keep 5, which is the second highest ridership presently, but cut number 6, which is the highest ridership. Number 7 is a cut, and switch to neighborhood service, and no longer will go to the Dinky. So what we currently have is 6 trips will be cut down to 1, with 1 new one, effectively down to 2 trips. The problem is that the new freebie schedule covers the 6:45 a.m. freebie with 117 riders, and then drops.
Wait, Kip, where are you getting
Yeah.
these numbers? Are these for a year or a month or what?
These are monthly numbers from June.
Okay.
So the problem is that the new freebie schedule covers the 6:45 freebie with 170 riders. This is June 2017. And then drops the 7:12 a.m. bus, which has 132 riders, the highest ridership. Then the 7:42 a.m., which has 91, is being dropped as an express switch to the neighborhood, and doesn't stop at the Dinky at all. So we're throwing out the commuter route with the highest ridership and the third largest ridership route as well. Currently, hardcore New York commuters are not using the freebie. We all know that. I would stipulate that New York City commuters have only a vague notion of the freebie and the freebie schedule. The question is, with strong promotion specifically to those who are or could be trained commuters now that the freebie is more reliable, can we get them on the freebie? Can we make a few changes in the schedule to make the freebie work better? And what else needs to be done? Looking at the freebie commuter express, currently, except for the 5:25 freebie, which starts at Witherspoon and Wiggins for some reason, the schedule is confusing. It starts at the Prince of Dickey station, where you want to go, not where you want to start, which I think is rather odd. Starting at the shopping center might be much stronger, and in fact, that's the one attribute about the new schedule that I think is a plus, is that it does start at the shopping center. I'm still evaluating the data, but there are generally 2 major surges for commuters going to New York City. From 6:15 to about 6:11 a.m. is one big, huge surge, and then it picks up again around 7:30. So those are the trains that we need to get people to. At this point, we don't have that much data on the June riders. We do have Ralph Widener's study, and that was done on one day, September 8th, and he found that there were 12 people riding the Dinky, or riding the freebie that day that were going to the Dinky. So if we project, we could come up with maybe 250 riders per month that would amount to, but at the same time, we have well over 500 riders. And where are they going? They're going to the Dinky, but according to one study on one day, they're not getting on the Dinky. We need to understand what people are doing. In addition to cutting freebie service, we don't have any idea what percentage of commuters that currently use the freebie can be switched to different routes, or whether they're just going to become disenfranchised from the freebie. Finally, as I have referenced, Princeton has made some improvements in the operation of the freebie. It bought a brand new, very reliable bus, thank you to Princeton University, and greatly improved its driver and bus backup systems. And it is installing transponders in the freebie so that people can track the freebie and know whether it's running late. So this is all very positive news. But before giving time for these investments to work, we are looking at cutting service to commuters in violation of the MOU. I think we need to reconsider. I want to end with a quote from Ralph Widener's study. And this came from somebody on the bus. Quote, "Without being asked, passengers on one loop voluntarily began talking about how few of their friends and neighbors know about the freebie. One writer asserted that something needs to be done, starting with some promotion in town topics." Happy to answer any questions, and I have with me John Kilbride, hiding in the back, who's been with Amtrak for 34 years and knows a heck of a lot about scheduling. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Robert Jackson, and I'm a resident of Princeton Community Village, and I'm here because I'm concerned about the new schedule and what impact
I just want to stop you for a second. So everybody's great tonight at speaking close to the mic, but just maybe a little too much, because then it's hard to hear you. So, yeah. You can hold it, too, if that's easier.
Okay. Yes, my name is Robert Jackson. My name is Robert Jackson. I'm a resident of Princeton Community Village, and I just have concerns about the new schedule for the freebie. I understand that you want to combine the two services in order to improve efficiency, but at the same time, we don't want to lose some of the service we already have, such as the 605 and the 606, because of this new scheduling. From what I understand, because we have more trips on the freebie, then in the future, New Jersey Transit can say, if they don't have enough ridership on their routes, like the 605 and the 606, that can cut services on those two routes. And being that I'm a state worker, I need the 606 to get back and forth to work. So I'm just saying that at the same time, we shouldn't do one thing and then jeopardize one service. Because not everybody wants to stay in Princeton. Everybody wants to take the bus outside of Princeton to other places as well. Because I have a lot of neighbors who agree that this service, this new scheduling, could cut New Jersey Transit out of the picture altogether if it goes through. That's just what I'm gathering. It's not from data. It's just what could happen if this scheduling goes through. And plus, another way to attract ridership is to get the people who normally take the bus every day, like the people in affordable housing units and people who, or you can have advertisements like at the bus stop, on the freebie, wherever, so people can see it. Because a lot of people don't know about the services that are in Princeton. And being that they don't know about it, that's why ridership is down. And I think there should be more trips going to the Dinky for the affordable housing complexes just in case they do miss the bus. Because the 605 is the only bus that goes to the Dinky from the affordable housing complexes. And that runs every 75 minutes, and people don't feel like waiting another 75 minutes for another bus. So instead, I suggest, I don't know if this is going to help any, that add more trips to the Dinky in the new schedule. But again, at the same time, it's going to be a hard decision to try not to entice New Jersey Transit to say, oh, they got the freebie, why should we keep going to Princeton Community Village or Reading Circle when they have the freebie service? But then that would jeopardize residents at Princeton Community Village or Reading Circle going either Quaker Bridge Mall or Hamilton Marketplace or even Trenton, because a lot of people from the affordable housing complexes go to Trenton and Hamilton Marketplace and Quaker Bridge Mall. So I think the 605 and the 606 is greatly needed, but we don't want to take that away just by adding a new service. And I think more transit services need to be implemented in other areas besides where the affordable housing complexes are, so you can get more ridership where there's no transit, because there's a lot of areas that don't have transit. And if we continue to just focus on one area, then we're going to keep on continuing seeing the same results. And we don't want to keep doing that. We just want to try to keep people out of their cars and then mass transit, especially if people have a hard time finding a place to park downtown, then mass transit would be a good option. And that's all I have to say. And I just hope what I have to say, it gets considered into this new scheduling for the freebie. And I just wish you all a wonderful evening and good night.
Thank you.
My name is Dozier Hammond, 87 Lee Avenue, and I'm on the Public Transport Committee now, too. I just want to say that this has been a very, it was a good, I think, decision-making process we went through, but very tough at the same time. I took the Dinky for 19 years on my commute into New York. I found it great. A number of other people took it with me and still take it. A number of people transferred over to Princeton Junction. And I think with the expansion of the parking lot over there, that's been part of the diminution of the Dinky. But also it's the moving of the Dinky, it's the construction that's been going over there, the increased use of Uber has been happening. And people finding alternatives because of the various delays on the main line corridor. I do think that even if we do go forward with this, which I was in favor of these changes because I think it's a better use of town dollars, But I am not happy that we've had to cut back the commuter service so much and have not had a chance to really promote it and to promote the whole Dinky and the whole town process of public transportation, which Go Princeton will do some of this fall. And then hopefully we'll have a way to promote the Dinky later on next year to fully try to get it back on its feet to a certain extent after the completion of the public transit, of the arts complex and all the areas down there. We actually have a whole new center in Princeton if you count the arts complex, and then of course McCarter, the 2 restaurants now, Wawa. There's a lot of things to do right in that area, plus getting to Richards and various other places on campus. But it is a little bit farther from downtown. And I hope that if we do adopt these as they go forward, that we then don't put aside the idea of adding back in some commuter service and more down to the Dinky as we now have a new situation with the construction all gone. I think that's going to be very important next year, and I hope we then can also think of, I say, adding more service back in. Yes, it would cost more money, but if it's really serving a public purpose for public transit and keeping car usage down in our town, then I think we should definitely consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
Dan Rappaport, Copperwood. I had read a long time ago that the way you maximize the number of people, or rather, people aren't willing to walk more than a quarter of a mile to catch a bus. So if you want to maximize the number of people that are going to catch the freebie, you need to make sure that the route that you have presently to go to the Dinky station is the route that has the most people living within a quarter of a mile of the streets used on either side. So I could see where the route could go in a different direction and serve a broader population, but I don't know if that is the greatest number of people that could be utilizing the service, but I trust you have the capability to find that out. And we should have as many linkages with other buses in a timely fashion as possible, and we should have greater frequency of service on the freebie. And if people see the freebie more often, they'll start noticing it and maybe they'll consider using it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Yeah, Ralph.
I was originally asked to join the committee in giving you some data in case you wanted it, but I can't resist making a couple of points that I think for the long term we should bear in mind. First of all, I support the committee's recommendation for the change, but let me give you the reasons why. When the commuter freebie was first conceptualized, it wasn't just the commuters going to Princeton Station that you had in mind. It was also people who live in town and work in town, 2,434 of whom drive to work in less than 10 minutes, might shift to using a free shuttle to get to their work in town. And the shift in the schedule facilitates that by providing a more intense and frequent schedule. And I think the transit education program that we plan for the fall, the Go Princeton program, is critically important to reach that group of potential users for the freebie. 23% of the people who live in town and work in town work for the university. And a very large proportion of them are concentrated in the northeastern quadrant of the town, where the commuter freebie goes to the shopping center. They're within orbit of that. When I rode the Dinky through its several cycles in the morning, I found 3 to 4 university employees on that, and they almost uniformly said, "Why don't you tell everybody that this exists? Nobody seems to know that it exists." So the promotion program is critical for that particular constituency. There are 884 rail commuters in town. A substantial chunk of them live in the outer areas of the town and are not reachable by a fixed route transit system, so they're sort of out of consideration. There are roughly 456 rail commuters in town in the current service area of the commuter freebie and transit, Tiger Transit. And yet we only have 39 riders riding the commuter freebie. And in the morning, about 46% of the 11 to 12 people who ride it in the morning, 46%, which means about 4 or 5, are headed for Princeton Station. The morning freebie is used partly by people who live downtown in the Witherspoon area to get out to jobs in the shopping center and the surrounding area, and by people who live out in the shopping center area and around Harrison to get in to town to work, and also to Princeton Station. Well, we're dealing with very, very small numbers, and we shouldn't kid ourselves with the reasons why. If you have free parking at the university, and you only have a 10-minute at most commute, it's easy to jump in the car and go down and park. So you're competing against that. Now, if the university decides for one reason or another to have a parking strategy that would reduce that, then you would have an incentive for people to start using this kind of service. But right now, it's too convenient. I live within walking distance of Princeton Station, but I almost always drive out to Princeton Junction. We're competing against the convenience of the car at a time when the rail is unreliable, the construction disruption's about to end. Ideally, if we solve the problems on the Northeast Corridor, you can begin to make a case for people to use it. But whoever said there's been a shift to the bus is correct. The data we have right now is that there's been a shift of people going to the bus to New York. So I would suggest we think in the long term about the area just outside the center of town. The final point I would make. If you look at the commuter freebie route right now, it services the center of town where the number of commuters who ride the Dinky is almost the same as the number of people in that area. We're serving the area that's easiest to reach the station from. If you go out to the next ring, we only add 114 riders in the close-in area. So extending the routes might not solve our problem. But our primary reason for low ridership to the station is it's easier for people to get there another way, and it's more convenient. And so the people who are riding it to the station are the people who either don't have a car or for one reason or another have to let the wife have the car and they go to work in New York. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? I just have one thought for the committee listening to folks, which is when this schedule gets put together, having the Dinky listed here is terrific, but we don't list any of the other stops where you can connect to something else, which is typically when you have a transit schedule, you'll see the connection. So it'd be helpful to know which of these stops is serviced by Tiger Transit, is serviced by the 605 or the other New Jersey transit buses, and even where you can pick up the suburban transit bus to New York. And I think that would help this schedule advertise some of those other services, and hopefully they would return the favor and promote the freebie.
That's really I would love that too, but it's way easier said than done because the New Jersey Transit changes their schedules and Suburban, but I do think it's a good idea. I think we should try
Well, even if
to
you don't
figure out
have
a way
the
to do it.
times,
Yeah.
even if you don't have the times, you could just have a little symbol of where you can make a connection.
No, I think that's a really good idea.
I agree.
You know, I wanted to address some of the things that people said during the comments. I think everyone agrees that we would love to have more freebie service if we could. It's just so expensive to run another bus. So we have to decide where the freebie's going to go, where it's most likely to get the most riders, and that's how we've decided right now. I mean, that's what the committee does. It's look at the schedule, look at the ridership, look at the possible, stops that have the most people living right near them. And so it does do a pretty good job of stopping at the places where there's the most dense housing, and the most likely riders of people who don't have another alternative. We would love to be able to provide a service and get people to take it who have cars. And I think that's kind of a goal for everyone in the future, but the cost of providing transportation when you have to provide the bus and the driver is just so hugely expensive that right now we can only afford the freebie, one route. What was another one of the? Oh, and that's one of the. So that's. Oh, the question about the New Jersey Transit ridership, and would this cut down on the New Jersey Transit bus ridership? I don't think. I think we would hope it would not, and I think we don't duplicate the route of the New Jersey Transit bus that I know of. So
We don't duplicate the route, but it's something to factor in whenever we do this. The 606 continues all the way to Trenton, but maybe the concern is that perhaps they would expect freebie riders to transfer, at the shopping center or something, but it doesn't duplicate the route.
But I think we should make sure that we're in touch with New Jersey Transit, and we can double check that wouldn't be the case.
Right.
Because that would be counterproductive
Yes.
if that happens. So,
Are there any other comments from council? Are you looking for just general consensus at this time, or do you want us to
I think
take
it would
a
be good to,
formal vote?
yeah, because then we can go ahead with, we want to give a lot of notice about this schedule. So I think we can make a motion to accept the report maybe or something, because the schedule is a draft schedule. I think we're going to work to tweak it and make sure it's that it's perfect before and then and I think it'll have to be approved by the committee. And then we want to put a lot of notice out to the, just so the people who are using it and who might be thinking they can use it, so that everyone knows. And also, we're not sure when Go Princeton is going to be finalizing all of their materials, but we just want to give plenty of notice. So if you could give us the go-ahead, then we'd feel like we don't have to come back here before doing all that.
I make a motion that we accept the report with the.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Liverman and seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any final comments? I do just want to compliment you all too on just putting everything into one schedule.
Yeah,
I
thank
find
you.
it so much easier to visualize and understand what's going on than having the two. So kudos to
Yeah, we're really glad that's
Thank
finally
you.
happened.
anybody else. And I guess one last question is, are you planning to take a look at this in 6 months or in some period of time? Like, what period of time needs to elapse before you're going to take another look and say, this is working even better than we thought? Or we need to rethink some of the changes we've made.
Well, we look at all the numbers every month, so
Okay.
there's ongoing discussion, but, I mean, if you're suggesting we put like a time frame to reevaluate, that's fine, we can do that.
Yeah, maybe we can put a date, and I can try to remember to report to the council too on it. I will.
Yeah, maybe you can come back next spring and just give a sense on, if things are running by then, just, what your impressions are and what the feedback's been and what the ridership's been like.
When do you think the Go Princeton is going to be ready?
I think it in October is the target date now.
Yes, I might.
Is that
look
right?
for-
Kristen, what? Oh, September, okay.
I might look for 6 months from that, otherwise this will be a little bit skewed. How down is the Dinky ridership? Do you know?
No, I don't. I think we got a report that it was 20% down or something from, does that sound right?
This summer's also really bad because of the,
20%. It has been really bad. I know my husband has an office in New York. He doesn't commute daily, but he does maybe, and he's been commuting 3 times a week. And he just stopped, and he always used the Dinky because it was convenient, but he has stopped because the service has been so erratic. Sometimes,
But it's New Jersey Transit or the Dinky service, or is it because of,
it's the Dinky service,
okay.
not just New Jersey Transit.
okay.
Okay, we have to
All in
vote.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so council gives you its general blessing for the report and the work you're doing, and let us know.
Thanks. And and Ralph has a presentation, but I think it's great that it's ready for the committee. Yeah, but I guess, thanks for putting that together.
I wanted to thank you all, and I wanted to especially thank Jenny Krummeller for her invaluable input to our committee, as well as the members of the committee and Greater Mercer. Every month, everybody works very, very hard at this. So thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you, Faye. Thank you so much for stepping up, too.
Okay, next we come to the ordinance introduction for tonight, which is 2017-50, an ordinance by Princeton creating a no stopping or standing zone on the south side of Paul Robeson Place between Chambers Street and Witherspoon Street, and amending the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. This was in response to a safety concern, I believe, about sight distance. They're coming out of the garage. Is there a
Yes.
motion to introduce?
Yes, so moved.
Moved by Mr. Liverman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quinn. Are there any questions or comments from council? Anybody from the public want to comment on this ordinance? Oh, yeah, Ms.
I
Butler?
have a question. Do we know what we're giving up on the meter revenue?
I can pull the memo from last year. So this follows up to a change that we made last year. We removed one parking space last year in this 2-hour zone, added 2 10-hour spaces.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at removing another 2-hour parking space. It's a neutral, I guess, no net loss at this point, but I can look up what the actual revenue is and get you that information.
Well, I guess I see that there's been one accident. Is that what we're,
There's been one reported accident that I'm aware of. I think we do have a situation where large vehicles tend to park, not necessarily just in that location, but when large vehicles park adjacent to the exit, it's very difficult to see. And so by removing this one parking space, creating a no stopping or standing zone instead of just a no parking zone, we're hoping to push the vehicles further away to open up the sight distance.
Yeah, it's a very,
So-
it's a very, very dangerous spot. I'm on that spot twice a day, and I can tell you how many times I've almost hit people and how many times I've almost been hit. It's a very, very dangerous spot. And when the trucks are loading and delivering, especially when the Palmer Square area, it's even worse.
But this is on Paul Robeson, am I right?
No, is it on Chambers and,
No, it is Paul
Yeah.
Robeson, but there are often
On the corner.
delivery vehicles,
Is it-
like box trucks that
Yeah, on the
park in
corner.
that area.
And there's no way you could make it a compact spot, a spot for compact cars? I guess, we just keep chipping away at these parking spots downtown, and it's revenue, and it's, people in our town who are supporting our businesses and whatnot, and so I don't want to belittle anybody's accident, but shoot, somebody hit a parked car on my street, does that mean we can remove the parking from there? Oh, we can? Do I see you nodding?
Can I,
I will say that anyone who rides a bike on that road, which I do on a regular basis, would definitely support this, because it is dangerous having people exiting that garage, and as a cyclist, if there is a truck parked there, you just can't, you don't see them until they're on top of you.
I feel like there's a joke in here, but I'm going to let it go.
I know, I'm a walking straight line, I know.
All right, yep.
I'll
Ms.
move
Howard?
introduction, or, okay.
I think it's already been moved and seconded, so I just wanted to see if there were any further discussion before we vote. Are you calling the question? Okay, all right. So, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Crummiller?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
The ordinance is introduced and the public hearing will be on August 21st, 2017. Next, we come to the first resolution, 17217, resolution authorizing the appointment of probationary police officers. And since we have you here, Chief Sutter, did you want to tell council about the 5 new hires? And I know, Heather, Ms. Howard, did you want to say something by way of
I think just to
introduction too?
remind folks that we're at 49 now, and we're anticipating 3 retirements for the end of the year, and then it was 11 retirements, people eligible for retirements over the next couple of years. So the hiring of these 5, given where we are now, will just keep us treading water, and then actually sort of warning to everyone, I think you're going to come back to us probably even in January to start the process again, but this allowed us to exhaust the list we had from the last recruitment, right? This was our last chance to go back to that list, and what's nice about being able to, if we approve this tonight, is that it allows you to send some of these folks to the academy this cycle, right?
Yes, that's correct, Ms. Howard. Basically, this is the list that we've been working off of. We've been very fortunate, I guess, to get such quality, the amount of quality officers that we have off of this list. Very briefly, 2 points I just wanted to make for council to understand the background on this. And thank you to Mayor and Council and Mr. DeShield and administration, and looking, kind of listening to me and looking proactively. We identified through our accreditation report as one of our major threats to the department that comes out of the report is attrition over the next 3 years. So eligibility for retirement between now and 2020 at a minimum would be 11 officers. And that's significant. And I feel it's important to proactively address these things. And I know we're a department that's always going to give 100% with whatever number we're at. My vision is just that we anticipate these shortages, or retirements, excuse me, because there's a lag time. There's a lag time of about 12 months by the time we hire somebody and they get fully certified. So these are just the kind of thoughts where I'm at. We have 5 highly qualified officers, and as I've said before, they don't meet minimum requirements. They meet what I call Princeton's requirements. We recruit a special individual that buys into our philosophy of policing, and through our process, we vet that. I believe we have 5 of them. They're diverse. They come from different backgrounds. And at this point on this list, we're pretty fortunate with that quality of candidate. And if they weren't that, I wouldn't be recommending them to you. I'd be saying we have to start again.
Okay, terrific. And just process-wise, oftentimes we'll do the resolution on the same night we do the swearing in, but we're bifurcating it this time for logistical reasons.
Yes.
So with that, is there,
I move the resolution.
Second?
it's been moved by Ms. Howard and seconded by Mr. Liverman. Any comments or questions from council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is Resolution 17218, resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with Chambers Architecture Incorporated for professional architectural and engineering services for the design and construction administration of a new cold storage facility at the River Road site for an amount not to exceed $124,950. And is there a motion to approve?
I'll move it.
It's been moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Ms. Krummeler. Any questions or comments from council?
I have a question.
Yep,
Did
Ms.
did this not go out, did we put this out to bid? Wait, Mark, can you answer it before Bob gets up here?
No, he has to answer. He's been sitting there
Hiding
the
out
whole
in the
time.
back.
Hey, you invited me.
He
I'm
was
gonna
hoping
speak.
he'd get a
Learn your
You
question.
should
lesson,
back
Mr.
off from
Huff.
the mic a little bit.
We did not. This is the firm that we've been using for the last 3 years with regard to the site and with preparation for, designing and going ahead. So we looked to him. We thought his price, and Deanna and I both have reviewed it, were within what we had anticipated, and we did not go to anybody else.
We're allowed to do that?
Yes.
Are there any other questions or comments from council? I just want to thank Public Works and also Engineering and Public Works, Deanna and Bob in particular, for getting this to us. I feel like we've been talking about this one for a while.
10 years.
So it's good to finally get some action.
We should have a big party in it before we move all the stuff in.
Let's get it built first.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes, and you might as well just stay there for the next couple. Next is 17219, resolution authorization, that should be authorizing? Authorizing the award of a contract to Caterpillar Incorporated through the Foley Power Systems via the National Joint Powers Alliance contract for electrical energy generator equipment with related accessories, services, and supplies. Contract number 08613 CAT for 3 new emergency generators in the amount of $111,839. And is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Mr. Liverman. And just wanted to remind council that we're expecting 90% of this to be refunded by a FEMA grant. So congratulations on the grant.
Okay.
Ms. Butler?
Oh, I was just going to ask whether it's accounted for in the budget, but it's covered in the budget.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes unanimously. Next is 17220, resolution authorizing the award of a contract to Polaris Sales Incorporated through Straub Motors Incorporated via the National Joint Powers Alliance contract for off-road vehicles and watercraft and related equipment. Contract number 090512 PSI for 2 new GEM electric vehicles for use by the municipal parking enforcement operations in the amount of $29,872. And these are plug-in electric vehicles, but they don't go in the water. That's just the name.
Thank you, I was really confused about that. And also, it's an off-road?
Yeah, that's the category of sort of miscellaneous vehicles, but these are not transformers.
Everyone did a double take
They're
on that.
glorified golf carts.
All right, is there a motion to approve?
And we're not
So
ticketing in Carnegie Lake.
Little tiny ones.
So moved?
It's moved by Mr. Liverman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quinn. Any questions or comments?
Bob, they're not the enforcement cars that people drive
They're
around?
very similar to them, but they're electric, and they look just like your golf cart that you see at.
Okay.
Bravo, that we're going electric here. And,
Yeah, these are the first two.
and then the whole
Plug
fleet
in.
will be electric eventually, correct?
If these two perform as we anticipate, next year we'll replace the other two so that it'll have a complete set of 4 for use by parking enforcement.
Terrific. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That resolution passes unanimously. And next is 17221, resolution authorizing agreement with Superior Gunite Company for concrete maintenance services in an amount not to exceed $33,900.
So moved.
Oh, excuse me, before you accept that motion, we were contacted by Superior Gunite after we submitted this. They had been misquoted the amount from the concrete supplier, and so they are actually, their new price would be $38,100 for this service. So I'm hoping that we can add that to the record for both the resolution and the agreement that the final price is $38,100.
Do we need to make a formal amendment for that, or how would you suggest proceeding?
Yeah, well, I think it's just a question of amending the resolution to reflect the,
Okay.
I make a
Correct
motion to
amount.
amend the resolution to.
Or do you just want to move it with the
I
new
think you could
figure?
just
Would you
move-
move
yeah,
it with
Oh, you can
the-
just move it with the
just
new
be to-
figure.
Yeah, I mean, just you're approving the resolution, but at the higher amount that was cited by Deanna, so 38,100 would be the not to exceed amount.
So,
Move it with the number.
okay, so Ms. Krummeler made the motion with the $38,100 figure. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Liverman. Are there any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution passes unanimously. Now we come to the consent agenda. And I just want to mention one change before we start, and that is we need to remove item number 9, which is the alcoholic beverage license renewal for Witherspoon Lodge, because we're still waiting on some paperwork. And I believe, Mr. Miller, did you want to just hold one item so you could recuse on it, the last item, number 22? For the Governor's Lane. So if there can be a motion to adopt the consent agenda minus item 9, unless there's any other items anybody would like removed.
Minus 9 and 22.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you,
Yeah.
minus 9 and
So
22.
moved.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Butler and seconded by Ms. Krummeler. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then we just have to take up this last item. Is there a
So
motion
moved.
for
Second.
17-241?
22.
Moved by Ms. Butler, seconded
Yep.
by Mr. Liverman. Any comments or questions?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and that passes with one abstention. Or recusal. Yep. And then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, moved by Ms. Butler, seconded by Mr. Liverman. All in favor? The meeting is adjourned.